soft, distant crackling sound, the low hum of chaos building. It started as a whisper in the night, the faint hiss of fire on old wood. Within minutes, that whisper became a roar. Flames tore through the quiet streets of East 17th Avenue, devouring a house packed with college students who had only just gone to sleep. By the time firefighters arrived, the scene was unrecognizable. 5 young lives gone in an instant, and no clear answer as to how or why. Who could burn down a house full of students? And why has no one ever been caught? Because what investigators discovered inside would haunt Columbus for decades. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, the kind that marks the end of a long semester and the beginning of summer freedom. The house stood on East 17th Avenue, just a few blocks from the Ohio State University campus, a familiar gathering spot for students, filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of youth. But as the night faded into early morning, that same house became the center of one of the most haunting tragedies in the school's history. When the fire was finally extinguished, 5 college students were gone, 5 families shattered, and a community left searching for answers that, even 2 decades later, remain painfully out of reach. Tonight, we revisit the inferno on East 17th Avenue, the fire that took 5 young lives and left behind more questions than answers. Spring in Columbus has a certain energy, that mix of warm air, final exams, and the promise of summer just around the corner. On East 17th Avenue, that night felt alive. Students spilled onto porches, music drifted from open windows, and the streets glowed with the restless pulse of youth. It was one of those nights where everyone seemed to know everyone. Laughter echoing down the block, red plastic cups in hand, just one more party before the semester ended. Inside the old 2-story house, a group of Ohio State students gathered, friends, roommates, classmates, people with plans, ambitions, and stories that were just beginning to unfold. Among them was Hannah Fisher, a senior studying communications known for her quick wit and big heart. David and Jessica, inseparable since freshman year, talking about moving to Chicago after graduation. Matt, the guy everyone called the calm in the storm who was set to walk the stage that weekend. And Laura, just 19, the youngest in the group, studying nursing and still figuring out where life would take her. They laughed, they danced, they took pictures that would later become memorials. They had no idea that within hours their names would be on every local news broadcast. As the night wound down, the neighborhood quieted. The last few guests said their goodbyes and the lights in the house began to dim. No one inside that house knew. It would be their last night. It was just after 4 a.m. when the first call came in. Neighbors later said they woke to a strange crackling sound. Not loud at first, just enough to stir them from sleep. Then came the smoke, thick and black, curling out of the windows of the house on East 17th Avenue. Within minutes, it wasn't just smoke. It was an inferno, one witness described. It has a wall of fire. Another said it looked like the house was glowing. From the inside out. The flames spread fast, fast, eating through wood, drywall, furniture. The air was filled with the sound of shattering glass, collapsing beams, and desperate screams for help. A neighbor, a student himself, sprinted barefoot toward the chaos, trying to reach the porch. But the heat was unbearable. He said it felt like standing next to the sun. He could hear voices inside, faint, calling out. Then silence. When the first fire trucks arrived, it was already too late. The blaze had consumed nearly everything. Firefighters battled it from all sides, hoses blasting into what was left of the structure. Some rushed to the back door. Others climbed onto the porch roof, but the building was collapsing as they fought it. By dawn, the street was covered in ash and debris. Students stood wrapped in blankets, watching in disbelief as the sun rose over the wreckage. The smell of smoke lingered in the air long after the last flames were gone. Inside, the scene was devastating. 5 students, 5 friends, gone. Others had survived, but with burns and memories they'd never be able to forget. One of them said later, "It all happened in seconds. 1 minute we were asleep. The next, the world was on fire. And when investigators stepped inside the ruins, what they found didn't match the chaos of an accident. The fire's pattern, its speed, none of it made sense. Something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. By mid-morning, the fire was out. But the questions were only beginning. At first, investigators approached it as a tragic accident. Old student housing, aging wiring, maybe a candle left burning after the party. But as the fire marshal sifted through the wreckage, the evidence began to tell a different story. The burn patterns were irregular, unnatural. Certain areas of the house were charred far deeper than others, as if something had fed the flames. Then came the confirmation. Traces of accelerants were found near the front entryway and along the staircase. This wasn't an accident. It was arson. When the word spread, disbelief swept through the Ohio State campus. How could someone deliberately set fire to a house full of students? Who would do something like that, and why? Detectives began reconstructing the night. They pieced together a timeline from security cameras, phone records, and eyewitness accounts. Neighbors remembered seeing groups of people walking home after the party, some laughing, some arguing. A few claimed they saw a shadow near the porch, someone moving quickly just minutes before the fire erupted. But no one could identify a face. Investigators interviewed dozens of students, friends, classmates, even casual acquaintances who had stopped by earlier in the evening. Rumors began to swirl. Some said it was revenge for a fight that broke out at the party. Others whispered that it was a random act, a cruel prank that spiraled out of control. For the families, the truth didn't come fast enough. They sat in silence at press conferences, clutching photos of their children, waiting for any sign of justice. But as the days passed, leads began to dry up. What had started as a house fire was now officially a homicide investigation, and the entire campus community found itself staring into a void of fear and disbelief. Because if someone could do this, and simply vanish into the night, what else were they capable of? In the weeks that followed, investigators chased every possible lead. One neighbor claimed he saw someone running down the alley moments after the fire began. A tall figure in a dark hoodie, moving fast, disappearing into the shadows. Another student said she noticed a car idling at the corner of 17th Avenue around that same time, headlights off, engine running. But when detectives canvassed the area, no one else could confirm either sighting. Those descriptions, vague, conflicting, became the first of many dead ends. Police brought in arson experts, profilers, even the FBI for consultation, but nothing stuck. Each new theory fell apart under scrutiny. A few people were questioned, some even detained briefly, but no charges were ever filed. The evidence, and what little survived the flames, offered no fingerprints, no usable DNA, no clear motive. Then came the rumors. On a campus as large and close-knit as Ohio State, whispers spread faster than any official report. Some believed it was revenge and that a fight earlier that night had ended with someone vowing to teach them a lesson. Others thought it was random, a stranger who targeted the house, for reasons no one could explain. But the most chilling theory came from those who lived nearby. They believed the person responsible wasn't an outsider at all, but one of their own, someone from the neighborhood, someone who might have stood shoulder to shoulder at the candlelight vigil, pretending to mourn. For the families, the weight became unbearable. Weeks turned to months, and the investigation that had once promised answers began to stall. Evidence degraded, witnesses moved away, memories blurred with time. The trail went cold, and the fire on East 17th Avenue became another unsolved headline. A case file collecting dust in a drawer somewhere, marked only by 5 names, and one word written across the top: arson. As the months turned into years, the case of the East 17th Avenue fire became less about evidence and more about theories. Investigators, journalists, and even amateur sleuths began piecing together their own versions of what might have happened that night. But none of them could ever be proven. Some believed the motive was jealousy, that someone connected to one of the victims had been driven by rage or heartbreak. There were whispers of a relationship gone wrong, of arguments at previous parties, of grudges that never cooled. But no one ever stepped forward. No confession, no closure. Others thought it was a thrill seeker, someone who wanted to watch chaos unfold, to feel power in destruction. Columbus police received anonymous tips suggesting that a person in the area had bragged about starting fires for fun. Yet when investigators followed the lead, it fell apart. No evidence, no link, just another rumor swallowed by time. A darker theory suggested a targeted attack, that the fire wasn't random at all but deliberate, aimed at someone specific inside that house. But if that were true, why did 5 people die? Why was the damage so complete? Whoever started it didn't seem to care who got caught in the flames. Even the timeline had inconsistencies. Some witnesses swore they heard a loud pop before the flames appeared, like a small explosion. Others said it was dead silent until smoke began pouring from the windows. Forensic experts debated whether multiple ignition points existed, suggesting the fire had been set in more than one place. But again, no proof. And one chilling question still lingers in every version of the story. If this was an accident, why did the fire spread so unnaturally fast? 20 years later, that question has never been answered. And for the families of those 5 students, the silence from authorities feels heavier with every passing year. In the years that followed, the fire on East 17th Avenue became more than just a police file. It became a scar on the memory of Ohio State University. Every spring, when the weather warms and the campus buzzes with the same restless energy it had that night, people still remember. Students who weren't even alive when it happened walk past that block and feel the weight of what was lost there. For the families, time hasn't softened the pain. Some still visit the site every year, leaving flowers or handwritten notes. Others can't bring themselves to return. They've had to live with questions that have no answers, with memories that play on repeat, birthdays missed, graduations never seen, lives that ended far too soon. The university built memorials, small tributes tucked around campus, reminders that behind the statistics were real people, real dreams. For classmates who survived, the guilt never truly faded. Some described it as living in 2 worlds, one that moved on, and one frozen in the glow of that terrible night. Each year, a vigil is held near where the house once stood. Candles flicker against the cold air as names are read aloud. 5 young lives, 5 futures erased. The fire may have gone out long ago, but its shadow still lingers, in the hearts of those who remember, and in the unanswered questions that refuse to die. In the end, it all circles back to that quiet Columbus Street, East 17th Avenue. A house that once echoed with laughter and music is now only a memory. The smoke is long gone, but the questions it left behind still hang in the air, unanswered and unsettling. 5 lives ended in just a matter of minutes. And more than 2 decades later, we still don't know who lit the match. Was it an act of revenge, a random moment of chaos, or something darker? A secret that's been buried for 20 years? Maybe someone out there still knows the truth. Maybe they've carried it all this time, hoping the world would forget. But the families haven't, the campus hasn't, and neither has the city of Columbus. What happened on East 17th Avenue remains one of Ohio's most haunting unsolved tragedies. So I'll leave you with this question. Do you think this was a personal vendetta, or a crime of opportunity gone horribly wrong? Let me know your theory in the comments below, because for now, justice still waits on East 17th Avenue.